part of who I am and what I do. But I think it makes it unique too. So I'm not trying to lose it or fight with it. Like I just embraced it. Like, I guess this is what I'm doing.
Hello, print friends, and welcome. I'm your host, Miranda Metcalf. I release weekly episodes with people around the world who share our love of printmaking. If you like what we do, please rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts. Or maybe just tell a fellow print friend about the podcast, and they can enjoy it too. We also have a Patreon page where supporters can join at tiers that start at just $1 a month, and that helps to keep us bringing you printmaking content every week. You can also get cool thank yous like exclusive merch, as well as access to bonus content. Shop Talk with our editor, Timothy Pauschak. These are chats for the printmaker's printmaker. They talk about color theory, materials, chemistry, and lots of nuts and bolts down-to-earth professional advice. How do you keep your practice dynamic after you graduate? How do you save money on art supplies? What did you get out of graduate school? So if this sounds like something you're interested in, you can check out the link in the show notes, sign up, and hear Tim's chat with today's guest. And if you want to save a little cash while still supporting the show, you can sign up for a yearly subscription and save 15% off the tier price. Printmaking forever, shun the non-believers. Hello Print Friend is brought to you by Speedball Art Products, who've been offering a diverse range of high-quality products to your practice since 1997. Products like their line of professional screen printing tools. Speedball believes that professional grade quality doesn't have to ruin your budget. Their aluminum squeegees, scoop coaters, and high mesh count screens are perfectly suited to outfit your workspace without changing your books from black to red. So if you want to upgrade your space from hobbyist to pro, head on over to Speedball's website to see where you can pick up your new favorite setup. There's a link in the show notes. My guest this week is friend of the pod, Jamaal Barber. We'll talk about his return to school for his MFA 15 years after finishing his BA in design, how this experience changed his art and how he defines what he does, doing his master's degree during some of the most turbulent years in recent memory in America, and of course, his fantastic podcast, Studio Noize. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and prepare to go back to school with Jamaal Barber. Hi, Jamaal. How's it going?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm very happy to be back chatting with you. I think it's been about 106 years since we talked last, give or take.
Yeah, so long ago, yo.
Yeah.
We over at number 17. Like, wow. Like, yeah. Ooh, how many episodes have we both done since then?
Seriously. Well, and it's the kind of thing that we talked about mid-2019, which I think on paper, is 2 years ago, but like, spiritually and emotionally is 106 years ago.
Yeah, we've been through some things.
Yeah, some things have happened. I'm really excited to chat with you and really, use this as an excuse to catch up and to share another chapter of your story with the Hello Print Friend listeners. But before we get into that, would you let people know from the September 2021, the who you are, where you are, and what you do questions?
Yeah, so I am Jamaal Barber. I am a printmaker, and I added artist to it. So I'm a printmaker artist, and I teach right now. I teach visiting lecture at Georgia State, and got a little print practice going on, and trying to do some with my life, make art, and have fun. Hopefully,
Yeah, I love it. And so you were a very early, generous guest of this podcast way back when it was called Pine Copper Lime, and I was just a baby podcaster with nothing more but my Apple earpods to try and record episodes. And we had a really great chat then, and we kind of did a deep dive into, your early influences and how you came to printmaking and all of that. So if anyone, wants the Jamaal Barber origin story, that's where they can go find it. But just for a little bit of context before we kind of catch up to the here and now. What is your sort of your short version, your elevator pitch? If you find yourself, in an elevator and someone's like, How did you become a printmaker? More or less, what would that sound like?
It's more or less, I was trying to find myself and stumbled into an art store while they were doing a screen print demo. And something about that, I was trying to do watercolors and stuff like that. It was not struggling with it, but I wasn't great at it. It's that kind of thing where it's not quite doing what I wanted to do. And then when I saw that demo, it just kind of clicked for me. And so I taught myself screen printing. From there, remembered like doing a couple woodcuts way back in the day in my college days. Started doing woodcuts and, just kind of went from there. Like it was kind of like found my home right in the print studio where I should have been the whole time. That's what I'll say.
Absolutely. And then you went on to study printmaking in college, correct? In college, I went and did graphic design. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And so I took that one printmaking class as an elective. Yeah. And so then along the way, I just kind of decided to I guess I give the whole story about how I got the MFA, how I got to the program. I was being recruited to come to another school. And until that point, I was just doing my regular gallery work and just trying to make it happen. And I never considered myself the type of artist that would get an MFA. Like I wasn't that great in school. I wasn't that great in school the first time around. So I never thought like, I'm going back to school. Like, nah, I was ready to get up out of there. But being recruited kind of opened my mind up to it. It's like, if somebody that is there in academia thinks that or sees something in me that's good enough, maybe they are seeing something I'm not seeing. And so that took me, it's like, okay, maybe I should give this a try. And so since I couldn't make the other place work because I didn't want to move my family, my kids are in school, wife has a job, like all this good stuff. And it's like, I want to uproot just for me to go to school. So that's when I applied to Georgia State, because Georgia State has a great MFA program. And it's all paid for, which is super important. Yes. Don't pay a dime to go to school if you don't have to.
That's
and so that's how I ended up getting there. But it took me a long time to get my mind right. I mean, I was out of school for 15 years before I went back to get my MFA, and I think I needed that time. Like I wasn't the type of artist that could go straight from undergrad to graduate school. I wasn't in the right mind state. I wasn't good enough. Frankly, I just wasn't good enough. So I think it worked out. I think I needed the time to mature and really find myself. And I think I did that.
Yeah. I've often thought about how much more I would get out of a master's program if I went now. And I had a great experience. I was really lucky enough to just stumble onto a fantastic advisor, which can make all the difference, particularly if you're kind of wandering
absolutely.
as a babe lost in the woods and don't actually know what you're doing, which was me for sure. But, having a few years out and really kind of understanding just more of myself and what I would want to get out of it, I think I would I'd have a completely different experience now. And I think sometimes students feel that pressure that's like, okay, BFA, MFA is next, chop. Like, do you want to teach? Do you want a gallery show? You got to do it. But I think getting a lot of the real world experience, and not just professionally, but also just personally, I'm sure can lead to a much richer experience, is what it sounds like happened with you as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because I was not the greatest. Right? Like, I always, I like to tell people that you really have to take your own time with this kind of thing. Like, because art is such a subjective thing, but it's also such a personal thing that you have to be in the right mind frame. You have to approach your work in the right mind frame in order for it to be successful in the first place. And so it takes a while to develop that, to find, quote unquote, find your voice when you're making artwork. But I think it's a process that we all take differently, and that we'll all find that point at different periods. So you can't really judge yourself by the success of somebody else. And you can't really take their story as a blueprint, because that may not work for you, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, just doing, all you got to do is go here and go there. Like, if you go and it doesn't work, what do you do? Like, that was their path. Yeah. And you have to find your own path. And so my path took me through a variety of mediums. And then when I found printmaking, I settled in and I like really focused on it.
Yeah.
When I started doing woodcuts, that's when I really got into this is how I draw. Like in this kind of carving away, this reductive way of working and settling into something like that. That is my process. I don't recommend it for everybody because you might be much looser. You might be able to just be more free. You might be more prolific in a different medium. And so, it takes a while to find it, but, and hopefully you can just keep going and eventually ease into where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually thinking a bit along these kind of lines a couple of days ago. My gallery that I work for here in Bangkok is hosting the Res Artists conference, and we were supposed to do it in person, but little bug named COVID has come along, so we're doing it like digitally. And I was watching, they were doing these survey findings that they had done, because Res Artists is this huge, basically it's a network of artist residencies throughout the world, and they try to make searching for artist residencies free and easy for artists. It's actually, I didn't mean to do a plug for them, but it's actually is quite a great resource if any artists don't need it. It's just Res Artists, so that's like artist without the T at the end.org, and you can search through hundreds of artist residencies throughout the world. You can search from, if you want free ones, if you want ones with a stipend, it just, can search by what continent you want to be on. Anyway, a little plug there for them. You're welcome. Res Artists, I'll shoot you my PayPal details. But anyway, and they had taken this huge survey for all of these people in their network, kind of about how COVID-19 had affected them and had affected their working process for the artists. And I was thinking about how, sort of reflecting what you were saying about how art is so personal and you have to find how you get in the right space to make it, about how when people are making a living off of their work and then these huge things happen like COVID-19, how do they are not in a situation, or most of them aren't, where you can just white knuckle it through, like, okay, like things aren't great, but I can go to my job and I can just answer my emails and I can go home and I can, do self-care.
Right. Yeah.
Artists can't do that, They don't have that option to grin and bear it while these things are truly deeply affecting them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's super true. And that same thing happened with me, like going through. Because, most of my work is about Black identity, kind of confront these societal forces and issues. And so once I was locked down, it was kind of like I'm not in the streets fighting society, like I'm at home. And so that completely changed my thesis show and the work I was producing and what I was focusing on just because of the circumstance. And so that's exactly what you're talking about, like this deeply personal shift that happened, where the stories that I was telling were not adequate anymore. Like, it would be more performative for me just to continue to make the same work over and over and over. That's not, and that works for some people, right? Where you've seen these printmakers before too, where, all right, they settle on a style, it's kind of successful, and they keep doing it. They keep doing it. Some variation of the same composition, some variation of the same cuts, some version of the same colors. But that's not where my art comes from, right? So my art was much more personal. Personal is probably the best word for it. Instead of trying to find like a great other word, it's just like a personal story, my personal feelings, and that you put into it. So if the context changes, the work has to change. But how does it change? You know what I mean? Like when you pick up certain other things, how does it affect what you can produce and how you approach it? And that to me was a really big thing.
Yeah, because I feel like you were in this situation where you were in graduate school, which is a time when artists are going through huge changes and often like real emotional upheaval a bit. I know many artists who have been really knocked off their feet a little bit by that experience, because it can be kind of unmooring to be questioned or to just like not have a environment that you were expecting, or not a particularly supportive environment. So you were kind of throwing yourself into this. At the same time, during this time period, we have the murder of George Floyd and the protests around the world. We have COVID. We have the attack on the U.S. Capitol, like all while you're in graduate school doing work about a lot of these issues that are suddenly coming to the forefront, that they've always been there, but now all of a sudden the world is is recognizing it. And, I was even, in Canberra and Sydney, and you were seeing BLM protests in those cities as well. Like truly wherever you were, if you were in a major city, you were feeling these reverberations. And I guess I don't even have a sophisticated question other than how was that for you? What?
It's so funny, yo, that kind of I was BLM before BLM,
yeah.
right? Honestly, my work has always been in that place talking about those issues all the time. And so, going into grad school, 45 was president, and that was already enough for me to be triggered, triggered as it is. And all this other stuff just started happening because it was gonna happen, inevitably. I saw it before he got elected. So as it went on, I was still making my work. I'll say this about grad school. So I went to a 3-year course, and for me, the 3-year courses always kind of go the same. One, you come in with your first year. You're used to making a certain type of work, and then you get questioned, and then you start reading, and then you start doing a lot of stuff, more reading than you probably have ever done for your artwork.
You're like a book in 1 week, like that. I remember that feeling. I think your syllabus
100
is
pages
wrong.
per class. Yeah. Yeah. So it's all right. So that's already a shock to you. By the time you settle into that from your first year, you get to your second year, now you're experimenting because you're starting to absorb it, right? And you start to look for your own readings that you're doing that'll get you where you want to go. You have more of a direction. And so the second year is real experimental. Mm-hmm. And then your third year, you're working on your thesis. So you kind of, after all of that, you kind of settled in, and now I'm going to do this thing because this is where I've come to after all this other stuff. And I think for me, COVID happened right at the beginning of that process, of the third year process, right? And so it completely shifted for me because, like I said, I did my second year, I did this really big collaborative show called 400, a collective flight of memory. And that show, I had 22 artists that I worked with, and we all did these kind of collaborative works and made 32 or 33 prints and paintings, mixed media stuff from that. And so that was, it was a big undertaking. So I'm thinking yes, I'm talking about the last 400 because it was 2019. So from 1619 to 2019, this 400-year period where we're studying or wondering where Black people have come to after all this time. This American experience has produced what? And that was that show was about, which was really an intense show. And it took me about a year to do it. So it was a lot of serious thought. Right. And you kind of almost get burnt out on it. And like I said, that's BLM before BLM. Yeah. Right. I've been Black for, 41 years now. So, that wasn't anything new for me. Yeah. And it's funny that when the pandemic happened, and like I said, I ended up being locked down. So all the societal issues are kind of irrelevant at that point. I lost 2 people real early in COVID around April. So that, shifted my focus completely to this thing can kill you. And so experiencing that loss and being a father, protective of my kids and, worried about all the other stuff going on. When George Floyd happened, I didn't have the emotional bandwidth for it. Yeah. You know what I mean? I could not go out and engage with it because I was already so concerned and so worried and so barely getting by as it was, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
It's already enough to lose people and then go through this pandemic and be so worried, not know. I mean, think about the time galleries were shut down. Yeah. So I'm making all my money off of galleries. So it's am I going to be able to make money? Should I even be making work at all? Right. How much of a luxury is it for me to be in my basement studio doing prints when people are getting sick and dying? You know what I'm saying? When it's this huge threat that's hovering over our heads. And so at that moment, when George Floyd happened, it's yo, we're still doing this? That's what I was thinking. I can't, I don't, I can't continue just to make the same struggle constantly. And, it just made me stop and think in the Black experience, I was one that was always jumping from outrage to outrage, and not as a performative Twitter thing. But as a genuine, like, yo, they did this to us again. Like, let me say something about it. Like Freddie Gray, let me say something. Tamir Rice, let me say something. Like it's always that, not as a obligation, but as a necessity for me as a person, as an artist. I need to release these feelings because it does become overwhelming because it is so personal to me. Because you shoot a 12-year-old playing in a park, no matter what he's playing with, he's 12 years old. Then you say he's a grown man and he deserved it. It's like, no. Like, my son is 9, my daughter's 13. Well, at the time, my daughter might have been, she was younger then. But the point is that this could have been them. And it could have been me. Like, how many times did I go out and play with stuff I wasn't supposed to play with, and no reason that I deserved to die? And so you don't realize how tiring that is until you stop doing it. Yeah. You realize, like, yo, I can't continue to just be engaged in this way. Especially like if all I'm doing is at home with my kids, I need to have, like, what mode am I in now? The protective, loving mode of a father, of a husband. Being in family, riding my bikes, trying to keep them in spirits, through virtual school and all this other stuff. I just didn't have the bandwidth for it. And so I needed to find, like, a new way to express what I was expressing. And so I ended up changing mediums because most of my thesis shows were paintings, like mixed media paintings. And it was specifically because all the press shut down. Like, I couldn't get into Atlanta printmakers, couldn't go to Georgia State. So I had to keep working. So I say had to, but I ended up working and doing paintings because emotionally, that's how I handle things, is through art. Is making stuff, like channeling it through that way. So when I was feeling all these extra emotions, I started doing sketching in my book and then doing ink wash drawings. And then that led to acrylic paintings, and I just kept doing that because that felt better than doing nothing, right? I bet, and even though I don't consider myself a painter, like I still love print as a medium, but I picked up painting because I didn't have access, and I didn't want to. It's this thing where when you're doing prints, you talk about the edition, right? You talk about the large amount of papers and variations. And if I had all that paper, what would I do with it? You know what I mean? Like, if I just kept printing editions at the pace that I was in months where galleries are shut down and you don't know what's going on. I mean, I had stacks of paper, like sitting in my house with nothing to do with it like that. I didn't think that was the appropriate way for me to spend my time. And so that's why I just started doing the paintings and stuff. And so once I started doing that, and by the time everything opened up, it was August. And I got to make a whole thesis show from August to January. Like, that, I don't know if I could start over and get what I wanted out of it. So I ended up just keep going with the paintings, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of people who work in the print medium and have, spent years of their life really forming this emotional attachment to it in this way that they use it as a part of their practice and even, their self-care, really did have to pivot. And I know a lot of people took up painting, which is it's so interesting because I feel like kind of anecdotally or kind of, when we're all sitting around at SGCI joking, it's like, painters, like they do get a little bit of that. But I know, like, it's like, oh, trader painting, but I've known many printmakers, including, my dear husband, who's going to do shop talk when we're done here. He's been painting, and I think that it's something that anytime, people get kind of like too focused, or I think maybe too wrapped up in something as like a part of their artistic identity, it is good to have that shaken up a little bit. And so now he's making these paintings that looks like he's painting like a printmaker. They're done in layers. Did you find that your paintings came out that way? It's funny you said that. Yeah.
Oh, no, it's funny you said that because that's exactly how my paintings look. Yeah. My paintings look like somebody that doesn't paint is painting, right? And I approach my paintings like that. A lot of it is, I approach it just like I do screen printing, where like you mix up all the colors that you want, and then you put one down, you let it dry. I put another one down, I let it dry. Like it's not a painting mix, mix it on the palette type of thing. Like it's not, like it's completely structured. Yeah. In that exact same way. It's a lot of mark making. Like you can see a lot of mark making in shapes in the same way that I move and how I render figures and everything. It's just like I do in printmaking. Yeah. So it's funny that you said that.
Yeah, I love to see it because I love that kind of structured way of deconstructing an image. Is always really satisfying for me to see.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It made me realize that's end up being how I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like even like carving is how I draw now. Like about like adding light and shaving down and making shapes. Like part of that whole process of doing a woodcut is how I think about drawing. I didn't realize that for a long time just because I'd done so much so much woodcuts that it's just like part of who I am and what I do. But I think it makes it unique too. So I'm not trying to lose it or fight with it. Like I just embraced it. Like, I guess this is what I'm doing.
Totally.
Like it's that type of thing.
Totally. And is that why, when you introduced yourself at the beginning, you said you've added artist onto your, like I don't even, what do you call it when it's like Esquire or, like when you add that kind of Jamaal Barber, printmaker, artist. Yeah, Esquire. Like, is that kind of where that came from? Is that within graduate school, you really did find this expanded practice that involves painting as well? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It involved more than prints. I think that was the part, because even my prints were doing like more sculptural installation type stuff too, that I still considered part of the print practice, but it's really not. And like when you start to like really learn about all these different artists all over, I got really obsessed with African printmakers too. And when you start to learn all these different process and all the different ways that people are expressing, you're like, you know what, that's where I fall into. And print is my main medium by far. If you if you just set me up, it's like, hey, make something, it's like 85% of the time is going to be a print. But it's that little extra stuff that I kind of got obsessed with. Like, so my woodcuts were a lot about the color black as a cipher. And immediately when I started doing the paintings, the one thing that I wanted was, if this is a new medium, if this is something brand new that I'm doing, then why do the same thing I was doing before? Like, why continue to use the color black? Why continue to have the same setups? Like, it should be different if the medium is different, because the mediums can do different things. And so I embraced and really questioned a lot of my practice about, why am I just using the color black when in this kind of more full, and my show is called Fullness, this kind of more full expression of me as an individual beyond just the outrage. Like, I live a whole life in between that outrage. Like, I have 2 kids, and I do a lot of things in between these moments of outrage, because it's not every day that I'm just, angry at the world. Like, I do a lot of different stuff. And so why don't I ever talk about that stuff? And so the show was about that. The show was about, why does it have to be black? So in the paintings, I didn't use the color black at all. And I changed sizes. Like, a lot of my prints were end up 30 by 22 just because of the paper size and working in that range. And it's like, why does it have to be in that range? Why can't it be bigger? Why does it even have to be square? Why couldn't it just follow the curves and natural movements of my body? And so a lot of what I did changed. And I think that's what grad school, why you have to be in the right frame of mind, because you have to be open to the change as part of who you are.
Yeah.
A mark against you to change, to say that everything that came before it is wrong. Now this is the way. Like, no, that's not it. It's a growth. It's an evolution in thought and who you are as an individual. And so a lot of that had to happen at that time. And if you don't want it to happen, don't go to grad school, because you can just do what you want to do. Like, like you got these people, not only the professors, but your cohorts. I had an amazing cohort at Georgia State. Like, I love them to death. I love all of them. They were doing so much great stuff in ceramics and sculpture and painting and a lot of things. And so they taught me a lot, just watching them and seeing their work develop. It's like, wow, like, Courtney's really doing some stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, Callie's like really, really like taking it to the next level. Like, what can I do to take it to the next level? Like, you have to be willing to change foundationally, like what you do and how you approach it. You're still you. And
Right.
that's what people fight against, is that, they're gonna make me stop doing what I do, but you'll still be you even if you don't do it. Like, even if Jamal's not making prints, Jamal is still Jamal. It's still J Barber Studio. Like, everywhere that you see my work is still gonna be that, and you're still the man with the brush in your hand, and that's okay. It's okay for it to be different and look different, and maybe it's better, maybe it's not. But maybe just through going through that change, just the thought process of it can enhance your prints. And that's where I am now. Like now that it's all over, I did all these paintings. I kind of fell in love with this process of color and gesture. Now I'm bringing that into my woodcuts. How that's going to look, I don't know yet, right? That's the fun part. That's the great part about it, is that like now I'm just kind of in this new terrain and I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm not sure if I can do it. But that's exciting too, because I also have confidence that I'll talk about this when I teach my kids, that you just have to have confidence that you can land the plane. Like wherever you do, whatever you do, wherever you go, just have confidence that when it comes time to bring it all together, you have the tools to bring it all together. That's kind of how I feel. Yeah. But I still don't know what it's going to look like yet. And that's exciting, just to be carving and experimenting and thinking about mixing colors and, learning so much about beyond just the little bit that I didn't know.
Yeah. And I feel like that's just such a wonderful thing to instill into your kids, because it can be so terrifying, I think, for artists to take on that change or to be challenged to change, because they didn't ever get, I love how you put it, like you have to have the confidence that you can land the plane, right? That you can take off, but you need to know that you will be able to land it on the other side, because I think that's where a lot of the wailing and gnashing of teeth and suffering comes from when people sometimes go to grad school, where they're like, no, this thing worked. This got me here. Doing it got me to grad school. I can't not do the thing that you accepted me for.
Yeah, like, and adding that artist bit, Craig Mengoski was one professor that asked me that. He was like, are you a printmaker or an artist? And, in the beginning, it's like, I'm a printmaker. Like, yo, how you ask me this question? How insulting is this? There's nothing wrong with being a printmaker. It's that kind of thing. But then it's like, are you though? Does being a printmaker exclusively define my art practice? No, it kind of doesn't. And so you have to be in the mind frame to be curious to even have that revelation in the first place. And I wasn't there when I first graduated. Like when I first graduated with my graphic design degree, I wasn't there. I wasn't the type of guy that would do whatever it takes to finish something. And I think I needed that part too, right? I needed the determination, the intrinsic drive to be an artist in the first place, and I didn't have it. And so, it's been a great process. Like even just me, like I said, my cohorts are amazing. Getting to know them and watching their careers, and as we all kind of spread out, it changes me. It has changed me a lot.
Yeah. I didn't get so much of the cohort, because I took a year off. So I did 2 years because I was just doing the MA, and I took a year off. So I had like the 1 year of bonding, and then they graduated, and then I came in and was a second year with this bunch of second years who had already bonded. And I still have friends from it, but I do believe that going through that transformative process, nuts to soup, with other people in your discipline really forges some lifelong bonds. And it's got to be so exciting to know that like you're going to be able to watch these people as artists and as humans kind of take on, the rest of their lives. And that's, I think, a really good reason just in and of itself to do graduate school. To meet those people. And
it's not, and you kind of want it. Like you're happy when they do kind of find their revelation. I know I was like, it was really exciting when it's like, oh, wow, like, look what you did, Callie. Like, that's amazing. Like it was that type of thing.
Totally.
Where it's having them succeed was a lot of my process. And it having that kind of bond, I'm not sure everybody gets that kind of bond, but that's what can happen. Like if everybody is engaged and approaches it the right way.
Yeah. And is in the right space where you can all root for each other, because I'm sure there are cohorts and graduate programs out there where that's not so much the case, that people are like really rooting for each other.
It wasn't the cutthroat world of Yale or something like that. Where only one succeeds. Like it wasn't that for us. So
there's only one spot at Juilliard.
It's not that. And I think that's how art should, I think it might be a printmaking thing too. Whereas, in the studio, it's always, wow, look at all this. It's so much collaboration that happens in a print studio because everybody's there using the same machine. Right?
Yeah, you have to get along.
Yeah, you have to get along, right? You have to have certain techniques for getting on and off the press out of people's way properly. But then it's like when you're in the studio, it's like, wow, look at this print. What went wrong? Oh, you could probably do this. You could probably do that. Like, oh, what are you working on? Oh, I've used this kind of technique. I've used soap ground, what I'm saying, on etchings. Like, is that type of thing. It's so much sharing that happens. And that's always my mind state whenever I'm interacting with other artists. So it's very easy for me to fall into that. Yo, what are you doing? This ceramics. This is amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I love that kind of thing, that kind of attitude. And I think that's the best way for us just to be as artists too.
Yeah. And I think that was another point of that kind of, I guess, emotional maturity that people need in order to really get the most out of grad school is you need to be in a place where you're not threatened by change and you're not threatened by others' success. Because both exactly. of those, if they're in your head, you're gonna have a bad time in grad school.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta always be looking forward to get the positive out of it because it's super hard. It's not easy at all. Mm-hmm. But you can be uncomfortable. It's okay. Like, you'll be fine. Yeah. We can still all make work and and be happy and celebrate and have drinks and do critiques. The critiques were amazing. I love the critiques when we were all together doing it. That's the one thing that COVID definitely robbed us of, the opportunity to have that last year together. Yeah. Like all together like we were before. Like, in the same room, having graduate artists. The grads had an art club. And so we would get together and do critiques and hang out and take trips and stuff like that. Like, taking all that kind of stuff away, it dampened it a little bit.
Yeah.
And we all wish we had this one trip planned, like all the grads where they were taking us to Ireland. We're going to be in Ireland for 2 weeks, and that got canceled too. And that would have been amazing for us, just as a group, just to hang out this one last time, somewhere else, and just explore and have fun. So it was definitely some downs, but it was a lot of ups because I think the pandemic put a fire on all of us that we're here, we got to make work because there ain't nothing else to do. Right. So I think we made some really amazing stuff.
Yeah. And going through that adversity with a group of people and kind of, really seeing who people are. I know it's a cliche, but when things get really hard, that's when you really can bond. And that's when you really have to all of the bullshit drops and you just are like, yeah. Oh, who are you? Who am I? Chips are down, So I think maybe, in some ways you lost a bit, but I'm sure you gained a bit too, just from having gone through it. Yeah. So I guess before, I want to keep an eye on the time here. So I want to make sure we have a chance to talk about some other things as well, but maybe it's to kind of to put a ribbon on the grad school talk more generally. If a young printmaker out there is hearing this and they're not sure if grad school is for them or not, it sounds like you did have a good experience with it, despite of and because of everything else that's going on in the world during those 3 years. What kind of advice would you give them for whether or not, if they're kind of questioning am I ready for this? Should I go work more? Should I go have a family and do other things first? What would you say to them? Because as a teacher now, you're in this position of authority. What would you tell them? Yeah.
That's funny. Jamal's a teacher. Yeah, that's right. I would tell them, I would really have to sit down and talk with them because I don't think it's a blanket advice that you can give.
Okay.
Because it's so many other factors. Do you want to be in school? Mm-hmm. Are you ready to question everything that you do? Are you ready to be told that you're wrong? Yeah. Right. And as just a part of the process in general, are you ready to ask yourself those questions and break down? Are you curious enough? Is your work, are you ready to focus? It's so many other things. Do you have somewhere you can go? Right. Mm-hmm. I'm tell people to the day I die, don't pay for go to grad school. Find somewhere that has an endowment or some kind of program or scholarship that will get you there. where you don't have to pay for it, because it is worth it, but at what expense?
Yeah.
And you are an artist. So so you got to think about that kind of stuff too. And so I know it's so many other questions, but in general, if you like it, go ask somebody that is where you want to be. Right. So if you want to go to UT, see if you can find somebody at UT to talk to. Like, even talk to some of the professors. Like, get in, have conversation with those people, because it's more than you think it is. And some people didn't make it through the program. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I still know them and appreciate who they are, but the circumstances were just wrong for them.
Yep.
And that can happen too. And it's all a part of a process. And so you don't have to go like right out of school. I waited 15 years before I went back. I was a grown man. I got 2 kids and everything. So everything will happen in its own time.
Yeah.
Right. So don't feel the pressure to do it. But if you want to, then do your due diligence. Go out and ask the right questions, talk to the right people, show people your work, because a lot, and it's hard for people to hear, it may not be good enough.
Yeah.
You may not be in the right place yet. And that's okay too, right? Like, art is a lifelong profession. It's not like football where, not for long, where it's only 3 years and you out. Like, you hopefully will be doing this till you die.
Yeah.
I want to die. I want to die in the print studio. I don't want to die, but I would
Yeah,
like
I know what you mean.
to spend my life engaged in the process.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I think that's where I find my most joy.
I love that. It's very good. Yeah. And so, how about this kind of new chapter now where you've got a professor cap on now and you're a teacher? I know that you said that actually that kind of sharing of knowledge and really a love for it was something that you discovered while you were in grad school. Yeah? Yeah,
that's true. Because at Georgia State and probably a lot of other places, you are the professor of record. For classes for your last 2 years. And I don't know, interacting with the students is the same interaction that I got from the print studio, where we would talk, share tips, help you through prints. Cause you don't want to go to the print studio and see somebody struggling, and you can tell them, adjust the press pressure and everything will be fine.
Yeah, don't cry.
And so it's that kind of it's okay. Like, I know what you did. And so, like, bringing that kind of interaction with the students and people that are genuinely there to learn how to make art, like just exploring these different techniques. I taught printmaking, drawing one, like right now I teach drawing one and life drawing. And, if you want to be better, I'm here. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that. And for the people, a lot of it is you see yourself. Like at that time, I always think of myself like right after I graduated school. I wasn't very confident. I didn't think that I was good enough to be anything at that time. I wanted to, but I was so unsure and lacked confidence. And I see that in a lot of the students that I talk to. And it's kind of like, I didn't have to feel like that then. And you don't have to feel like that now. Like there's something I can tell you, some way I can help you, something I can show you that will get you over that hump and make you better. And it's something about that feeling. Like once it clicks for somebody and they really say like, yo, Professor Barber, like I get it now. And they really do get it. Like I like that feeling. Like I like being there for them. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think you have to have a lot of empathy for people to be a teacher.
Yeah. And I think just a lot of, not like letting your own ego kind of get wrapped up in it, and really realizing that like you can't do the work for them. You can just put the work in front of them, and whether or not they do that is like their journey, and it doesn't reflect on you. Like you can set up the most ideal circumstance, but if they won't step forward, each person has to be on that own art journey, and in the end, like you can't control it, and I think
you can.
That professors can kind of get burnt out if they're just if they're like I'm doing everything right, like why isn't she, like
there is a lot of that, Joe, because you end up caring for these people.
Yeah.
Like you do. It does matter to me that my student come in and she understands intaglio prints. Mm-hmm. Like not that she can do it. Not being able to do it is one thing, but do you understand it? Do you know why these things are happening? And if you know why, if you know how, if you know the mechanics of it, you can adjust everything just through creativity. You know what I'm saying? But it's super important. And nothing's more frustrating, especially like now I'm getting ready to start teaching my Drawing One students perspective. And perspective is always like, no matter how much you explain perspective to somebody, like when they don't get it, it's so frustrating because it's like, to you, it's so simple. It's like, yo, why don't you get this? Like, but you gotta like, as a way of creativity comes into it, the same artistic creativity I put into my prints comes into your professorship because you want to think of a way to tell them that they will get, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've come up with 100 ways to explain perspective. And one of these ways should work for you. And if it doesn't, I'll come up with 101 ways. And it's constantly that thing that I want you to get it. Like I would not feel complete if you don't understand this thing. Like you have to understand, like you pour yourself, so much of yourself into other people. And I like it. I didn't know that I liked it until I went to school, but I do like it. I like that idea. It tires you out. It wears you out. These people will drive you crazy. but I don't know. It's something. I don't know, yo. I think I needed it. And in a lot of ways, I am constantly still in that space with myself. To make up for all those years, I felt like I was lost, and I don't want anybody else to be lost. Is that type of
Yeah. And there's something so powerful about the way in which you need to come to know something to teach it to someone else too.
Right.
And it's a completely different kind of knowing than being a student. And so it's so cool that you get to spend this time really just as a student again. Like you said, as a grown person coming back, being a student again, and then getting to see kind of like that through the looking glass, through the other side again, of like coming back to it then as a teacher. That's just it's got to be a really rewarding and exciting experience, I'd imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. More exciting than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so also on top of, a printmaker and an MFA holder and a professor now, you have also consistently been producing a podcast as well.
Yes, that's right. Still keeping it going.
I really am like a huge fan. I really, whenever I'm on Instagram and I'm scrolling through, there's the inundated by images. Whenever an image has made me stop, it's like, whoa, what? Oh yeah, Studio Noize. Like I'm always like, I go through this seriously, like I think, once a week where I'm like, whoa, what is it? Oh yeah, Studio Noize. Yeah, that tracks. Like you seem to just have just this like endless well of these artists who are doing just incredible work. And then, getting to have these great conversations with them. And so was that something that you found to be like rewarding while you were doing everything, or was it kind of stressful sometimes to kind of try and keep it going, or did it inform your practice at all, as you were kind of shaking up what you were doing as an artist, but at the same time you're having these conversations with like some of them quite established artists who are sort of fully in their practice? How did it fit into, I guess, the rest of your life is my very all roundabout question. Yeah.
I think it has just become a part of what I do. Like going back to the kind of communal experience in the print studio, I think the podcast is the same way, right? Oh, and let me say this, like, congratulations on this podcast.
Oh,
like, I listen to y'all all the time. Like, you're always pulling up like some of the, some of the best printmaking names always. Like every time I look like, oh, okay, I know that guy. Like, because print is sometimes like, you don't know the work, but you don't know their names, but you know the work.
Yeah.
And like usually like, oh, it's that guy. like that type of thing. So it's always good. And, congratulations on, even changing the name, I think is a great name.
Oh, thank you.
That you have now. Hello, Print Friends. Yeah. So, congratulations on your success. But I think that it just become a part of who I am and what I do. and having these conversations. And I think, it's super stressful because my co-host left to do other things. Shout out to Jasmine. Love Jasmine. And that's fine for her, but I always told her that I will want to keep it going because I just like having these conversations and talking and even giving it to other people because, once in a while, this podcast stuff is a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yo, man, I don't know if I should keep this going. Then I get an email and it's like, oh, I listened to this interview and it was really great. Like, thank you for the podcast. Like, all right. I guess I'll keep going. Yeah. Like, it's that type of thing. And so, I love talking to people. And I think I make it a point too. During the pandemic, like I lost 2 people early in April. And then in November, I lost my man, George Knock. He was a fantastic artist and mentor of mine. And I never got him on the podcast. And I think that part hit me a lot is that George was amazing. And now he's gone. And if I could just share like one of his stories that he told me from everything that he did, he was an amazing sculptor. And I used to just come into a studio when I first moved to Atlanta. He used to just let me come to a studio and just spend all day with him while he's doing some great, amazing project. And I don't know, I miss George.
Yeah.
And I wish I would had his voice or his story. And so now I'm focusing a lot on getting some of the older artists onto the podcast just to archive this stuff, And so, so now it's a lot of fun for me, but it's also a little bit more of a mission to get some of this stuff done. I think had the pleasure, the honor to talk to David Driscoll before he passed away, like a year before he passed away. And that was now included in a retrospective show that he was in of his work in Portland. That interview is part of the exhibition. And so that kind of stuff is important to me now. It's like to be able to like reference all these people that have done all this work for whatever circumstance may not have been super celebrated. I mean, David Driscoll he has a museum, the High Museum named award after him. Like he's not, there's no problem for him getting recognized. But, there's a lot of people out there that are doing art, that are doing great work and will never reach the highest heights of, name a big artist, but their story is still valid and their story can mean a lot to somebody that's looking for it, Yeah. And so it has become much more of a mission for me lately. And I'm going to keep it going. I might miss a couple episodes just because of circumstance where teaching has got a lot. I moved to a new studio in Midtown Atlanta, and and my home repair stuff leaks from my refrigerator and has held me up. But even in those moments where it's like really stressful, I still want to do it because I still think it's important. You know what I'm saying? Even if me, as many people don't listen as I want to, like I still wanted to be there. And I think that's the important part.
Yeah, and it's really kind of rewarding for me to hear your reflections on it because I really identify with it a lot. That sense of that it is a joy and a privilege. And, I think of what I do is creating an archive as well and kind of take that seriously. Like we have great conversations, but it's also, this is a record, a little snapshot of early 21st century printmaking. And so, all of that, and then how it can be really, it can kind of fill your cup, but almost like just sort of having it hanging over your head. Like it always, like every time you make one, it goes out and then you got to make another,
Yeah.
Like it doesn't, you don't get to keep them. They disappear,
Yeah.
So it's like, well, the actual.
And the next one has to.
It's got to be good.
And the next one has to be just as good.
Yes.
Yeah. Just as good. Like you can't slack off, don't bring in, but I think it's also interesting that it's so much of these stories that artists need to hear. You know what I mean? Like, for printmaking, your focus is printmaking. My focus is just Black artists in general. I think it's important to hear the story of a Black artist as you're trying to be a Black artist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just have somebody you can relate to and know that it is possible for you to do this thing. Like printmakers the same way. Like listen to all the, I just listened to the one with my man from High Point on it. It was a great podcast when he's talking about setting up a studio and all that kind of stuff. Like, so like it's so much information, and at different points you might need that information just to get into the studio. You know what I'm saying? Just to keep going, because it's like I said, it's personal, like, and it's emotional, and it's hard to be an artist.
Yeah.
Like it's not an easy thing at all, especially when you gotta make art to pay your bills, and it's like, yo, how?
Right.
You know, every once in a while you just go into the studio like, how am I gonna do this? Like, what am I gonna do that's fresh that somebody would actually want? And, you know, you just need that little nudge. So hopefully, you know, between our two podcasts, we keep people going in the studio. Keep them making noise, as I say.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, I really connected with is when you were talking about like that feeling of like, oh, it's getting a lot, you know, maybe I don't want to burn out. I don't want to start just doing it out of habit. You know, maybe it's about time I think about passing it. Oh, look at this email. Oh, wow. I'm doing that for someone? Like, you know, like, all right, another 6 months at least, you know?
Yeah, at least, yeah. Oh, man, I do that. I had that conversation so much because it is a lot of work, yo. And after Jasmine left, I changed a lot. Like, if you listen to the podcast, a lot has changed and kind of streamlined just so it's easier for me to kind of do what I do.
Because I think Jasmine was doing the editing. Is that correct? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah. Jasmine was doing editing and stuff. And, you know, it's different energy when you're doing it together. Like, you know, you got your husband and that's awesome. You know,
it's really good
to have somebody else there with you. And, you know, when you just do it on your own and you don't always feel like people are listening. Like it's hard to keep going sometimes. So those emails, they catch me at just the right time to make me keep doing it.
Yeah, I have so much admiration for you for sticking to it after Jasmine left, you know, just because it's like, I'm just saying, like right now, like if Tim ever quits, that's the end. So like everyone be nice to Tim, please, because like I can't, like I remember seeing that and being like, wow, that is really great, because I can't imagine taking it all on. And so I just thank you for keeping it up and for making the archive and for continuing to bring just great stories and great conversations. So please, everyone, if you have not checked it out, please check out Studio Noize. It truly is my favorite art podcast out there. It always makes me like want to go see shows and introduces me to new artists and get excited every time. So definitely check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes to it too. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I think that we're at our hour recording mark, but you are gonna have a shop talk, right, with Tim?
That's right. Yeah,
Excellent.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Well, Jamaal, it has been really great to catch up and to hear your voice live and interactive after just listening to it in my headphones.
Thank you, yo.
Yeah, and I'm excited that we're going to be back on the same continent in a little bit of time here, and maybe we can talk about doing some collaboration or something. I know we're both busy people
it has to happen.
and family people, but I would really love it. Yeah, if maybe we can come up with something fun to do with the podcast. So let's keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Yes.
Well, I will pass you on to Tim, and thank you. And sorry about the scheduling confusion and all that, but we were able to connect, and it was just really nice to catch up.
Oh yeah, for sure, yo.
Well, that's our show for this week. Join me again next week when my guest will be Sandra C. Fernandez. We'll talk about dislocation, relocation, memory, self-conscious identity construction, and the Consejo Gráfico Nacional, an organization that brings together Latino printmaking talleres throughout the United States, of which she just happens to be the executive director. You won't want to miss it. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing by Timothy Pauschak and music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you next week.